Let's say you were building a town. What do you need? Houses, obviously. Roads to get to the houses. You also need the basic necessities, like schools, supermarkets, health facilities, parks, shopping centres, childcare, and more. You'd probably want a bus line as well, maybe even a train station, to get people to nearby towns. Now picture this. Imagine the houses were built, and then nothing. With Sydney growing and growing by up to 200,000 people every year, our state government is frantically opening the outskirts of Western Sydney up to developers. Houses are being built at lightning speed. Developers have that first step down pat. But the rest of it, the roads, the schools, the supermarkets, the basic necessities, the transport, they're being left to the state government. And that's a problem, because they're not keeping up. It's called urban sprawl, and it's a devil. Today, I'll be talking about Marsden Park, one of the many suburbs in Western Sydney that is the victim of a deeply flawed city planning mindset. One that has inadequate roads, cookie-cutter homes, overcrowded schools, and far more problems. In this video, we'll be exploring just how destructive urban sprawl and infrastructure lag have proven to be to the residents of Marsden Park. Welcome to Building Beautifully. Before I continue, please do consider hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. And do be sure to check out the rest of Building Beautifully, your go-to YouTube destination for all things city planning, after the video. Marsden Park is a small suburb located 49 kilometres northwest of Sydney CBD. Before 2013, the suburb was pretty much still semi-rural, little more than a few small streets, a public school and a mosque. This started to change in 2014. That was the year that massive pieces of Marsden Park slowly begun development. The first new residents started moving into the new estate in 2015. Over the years that have passed since, more and more of Marsden Park has been opened up to developers, allowing the suburb to just grow and grow unimpeded. Marsden Park benefits from being far away enough from Sydney CBD that developers were able to keep prices low, but close enough to Richmond Road and Schofields train station that people could readily access transport to the rest of Sydney, or at least in theory. That's pretty much the thesis behind urban sprawl, especially in a city like Sydney. Australians want to own their own houses. It's part of the Australian dream, and that dream can come true, so long as you're happy to live 50 kilometres away from the city. There's not exactly much space left near the inner city, after all. Developments like Marsden Park generally are advertised in very flashy, appealing ways, talking about tree-lined streets, cycleways, parks, wide roads. They'll often talk about plans for a new school, a new shopping centre, a childcare centre, maybe even a train station if they're lucky. But that's the problem with urban sprawl. Remember earlier when I talked about what you need to build a town? When the development and growth of estates occurs in such a quick, uncontrolled manner, the plans often just can't keep up. Marsden Park started opening up to residents in 2015. It didn't get its new promised public school, Northbourne Public School, until 2021. It didn't get its new shopping centre until 2021 either. And its promised high school is still in the planning stages. While a location has been secured from the high school, it could be years before the school opens. Buses from the suburb to Schofields, one of the nearest train stations, did not run for years, frustrating residents who demanded better public transport. Most worryingly of all, for 5 out of the past 6 years, there was only one road leading out of Marsden Park, Illawarra Boulevard. That's right. The government managed to stuff up perhaps the very first step of developing a new town: adequate roads. For a suburb to only have one road leading out of it is quite a monumental stuff-up. News articles quickly started appearing in the media as traffic in Marsden Park backed up daily, with residents complaining that it could sometimes take 30 minutes just to get out of the suburb in peak hour. This isn't just a convenience problem. To have no alternate route out of a suburb also poses a flood and bushfire risk, especially given that areas of Marsden Park lie in high-risk flood areas. Luckily, another road, Able Road, opened out of the suburb in 2021. And luckily the suburb is slowly playing catch-up. It has had buses running every 15 minutes in peak hour to Schofield Station since 2019. It does now have a shopping centre, and it does have its promised new school. The suburb is on its way to becoming a proper, established town. Well, fine. Northbourne Public School, which has barely been open for 2 years, is already operating at 1,100 students, beyond its 1,000 student capacity. Infrastructure is catching up with Marsden Park. It's just not doing so fast enough. Master-planned estates like Marsden Park seem like excellent ideas when they are planned, and they often have the very best of intentions. The trouble is that while the developer can build houses, the development of the proper infrastructure to support these houses, roads, buses, schools, healthcare, they fall to the responsibility of the state government. A state government that, simply put, often lags behind that of the local developer and local council. It's called infrastructure lag, where the proper infrastructure to support a town lags years behind the growth of the town itself. And when the infrastructure does arrive, often it's not even adequate enough. A perfect example of this is heavy rail infrastructure. You see, Marsden Park may one day have its own train station. The plan is to extend the Sydney Metro Northwest at Tallawong to Schofields, then to Marsden Park, before heading south to St Mary's and linking up with the Sydney Metro Greater West to the new airport at Badgerys Creek. The trouble is, there are no plans in the immediate future to carry through with this. The metro to Marsden Park may not be built for another 10, maybe even 20 years. This infrastructure lag is worrying. Despite the areas west of Blacktown being the fastest growing in Sydney, only 26 of Sydney's 170 stations are west of Blacktown, and there's only immediate plans for 6 new stations to fix that in the next 10 years. Infrastructure drives development. It's a message I've pushed time and again on this channel, but the relationship should never be reversed. Development should not drive infrastructure, because the infrastructure to support these developments, roads, schools, transport, they should be coming first. Infrastructure lag crippled Marsden Park for years. It's only just beginning to recover, and even so, it could take years before it's a properly established, truly accessible town. And the problems of Marsden Park are simply being mirrored all over the outskirts of Sydney. Austral, Oran Park, Box Hill, Harrington Park, Gledswood Hills, North Kellyville, Spring Farm. Our state government is releasing land for development faster than it can build infrastructure to keep up. And that's a problem. I mentioned earlier that living in a house is part of the Australian dream. And it's true. Australians want to own a house. But that's difficult when our city is in the grips of a housing crisis. Often the only options for young families wanting to raise their kids in a house is to live on the far outskirts of Sydney, regardless of how far away they may be from the rest of Sydney, regardless of whether or not the infrastructure is even present here. The market wants houses, people want houses, and they're willing to accept anything. The result? Rows and rows of houses that all pretty much look the same, squeezed in as tight as possible together. These houses have been dubbed McMansions in common media throughout Australia and even the United States, because while they all may be nice and big, they all look the same. Mass-produced, generic, like a McDonald's burger, hence the name McMansions. These areas need more trees, more green space, bigger backyards, but they just don't have that. I don't want to insult those who live in these estates, because at least they get to live in a nice house, part of the Australian dream. It's just unfortunate that these areas lack the foresty charm of older areas of Sydney, and that's sad. High-rise development is the better, more sustainable solution in a lot of these situations. More people can be squeezed into a smaller area, while still ensuring adequate access to green space, shopping centres, transport, education and more. It's just easier for planners to allow for better walkability and access to infrastructure if everything is tightly packed together in apartments. Unfortunately, many young families want houses, and that's understandable. Living in an apartment carries an unfortunate stigma in Australian society that even I myself am not immune to. Our government is desperately trying to build as many houses as possible, trying to keep up with demand, trying to manage the housing crisis as best as they can. But they're doing so in a horrifically short-sighted way. Imagine new estates where schools and shopping centres opened up in sync with the estate, where roads were initially built adequately enough to handle congestion, where bus services were plentiful, where train stations were delivered as quickly as possible. Imagine a town that grew in the natural way I cited at the start of this video. Our state government should prioritise this, instead of allowing infrastructure lag to continue to cripple thousands of residents of Western Sydney daily. Urban sprawl is harming Sydney. Simple as that. Residents and young families deserve to live in houses, but that's not all they deserve, and developers and governments need to realise that. They deserve proper infrastructure. They deserve more greenery, more space. They deserve to not feel like third-class citizens simply because they can't afford to live closer to Sydney CBD. They deserve more. Western Sydney deserves more. Marsden Park deserves more.
If you like this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.